what you say. Pop rock lies, we're here to stay. No fake rules, not corporate chains. We're calling out your lying games. Shut the fuck up, we're breaking through. Speaking truth like we always do. No stop, see, no watered down sound. Punks unite, we stand our ground. Raise your voice, shout out loud. When the misfits lost in the crowd. No surrender, no backing down. This revolution's underground. Shut the fuck up, we're breaking through.
What is up? It's been like a long time since I've done a show, and I have a good excuse. I have a baby, and he's awesome. I swear to God, my eyes are red from allergies. It's not because I'm losing sleep. He's sleeping through the night now, so that means I get to do shit like this again. And I am extremely stoked to bring back someone who I met through Twitter, who is very cool. Kind of a fake emo, but doesn't like to claim the emo title. Libertarian Goth. So welcome, Libertarian Goth. What's up?
Fake emo. Goth. Like
you're
or
a
came
real
before
emo.
emos. Like anything, you're a fake goth. Not name like any of the emo bands that you like, and you don't listen to any of the goth music that I do. So no, if anything, you're a fake goth.
You know what? I might listen to some of the same music. Yeah, I don't know for certain, but I know that you really like a couple bands that I listen to, and if I have to, call you out, I got to call you out. Like you talk crap to me online all the time about not being an emo, but you're an emo. Whether you like it or not, you cry all the time on the internet. This is
I'm not emo. Cry out. Okay. What is it? Emo's depression is like nihilistic, goths are nihilistic, where emos are cynical.
You might have something there.
That's the difference in the darkness.
Okay.
Well, that's what South Park said. They basically nailed it.
Oh yeah. So are you trying to suggest that like emo is the light mode, and like if you're looking at a computer screen, like I'm getting blinded right now over here, and goth is dark mode? Because I don't know, I've met some pretty go ahead.
It's the whole goths are depressed because the world is effed up. Because they think the world is effed up, where emos are depressed because they think they're effed up.
Okay. That's actually like a really good point. So
yeah,
because the world is such an effed up place, it's a very natural transition to start hating the government.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And, I don't understand the bootlickers now.
Right. Well, okay. So this kind of like brings it up. Obviously, your name is Libertarian Goth. And how did you dive in? I see Ron Paul behind you. And obviously, I'm a big Ron Paul stan. So how did you first, jump into libertarianism?
Well, I was first introduced to it when I was still on the left. I had like a friend that introduced me to Ron Paul. He was all about Ron Paul, the whole like the revolution thing. So introduced that way, and I went conservative. Alfonso Rachel, he was the one that kind of brought me into conservatism, and then Young Americans for Liberty at college campuses were introducing libertarianism more and more. So I was starting to move from conservatism to libertarianism. And then I was a libertarian leaning conservative for a while. But after the bump stock ban, that is like my moment when I was like, you know what? I'm done with conservatism. That's what it is, and that's a Second Amendment violation. I'm a full libertarian now, and I have not looked back since.
So you're a gun person. You're a big Second Amendment stan. That's sick. So,
Oh yeah.
And I would say too that, libertarianism is like emo and actually like goth kind of, whereas it's not a phase. Like once you take the red pill, right, you can't untake it. Like you can't go back to seeing the world normal anymore. So, and
Right.
I feel like, I mean, the bump stock ban situation, it happened so long ago that it's like, oh my God, that was what I was complaining about back then. That's it. But now I'm in New Hampshire, so I can do what I want with my gun. So, you poor humans out there
Lucky.
in the other countries. But yeah, so I guess like, we are both, libertarians. I would probably call us both lowercase L libertarians. I distinguish the two. I'm on the board for the LNC and LPNH, but I think that the liberty movement is much bigger than just the political sphere, and I think that you'd probably agree with me there, because what brought me into some of my favorite music and turned me into an anarchist at a young age was the music I was listening to. And, like a lot of the anti-government stuff, like they all ended up being Democrat shills, but we're talking, no effects and like just, anti-flag, some of the older punk music. Obviously metal, goth music, like they have, a strong, distrust for authority. A lot of them do, at least, so a lot of those guys stands for the government as well in their own ways. But, I think that it is like a really good, introduction for us to go and break into these spheres and just be an introduction to the principles of liberty. So, like, what do you do with your aesthetic, the goth? You're advertising yourself as goth. How do you go from this to introducing yourself into the real world and talking about real world problems?
Well, of course, looking at me, like every day, no one would know that I actually, don't lean left, since the left has kind of hijacked, you know, a lot of alt culture, and you see the aesthetic and you automatically assume, because like you were saying, the music, whenever you were coming up, like no effects and all of them, they end up being Democrat shills, but back then the Democrat Party was actually anti-war. They actually seem to stand more for a little bit more freedom than they do now. So as far as like real world, I do go about my day as myself. I don't always, dress up in my black lace. My usual attire is just like a band t-shirt and leggings. But it's one of those things where I don't have to necessarily be concerned about like the crazy, leftists or anything, because they assume I'm one of them. But if I wear this hat, I actually had a girl tell me that she was scared at first until she read my hat. And I'm thinking, like, what? Like, it's not the conservatives that are wilding out, unless you talk about, January 6th, but they actually brought that to the source, which I actually respect conservatives for doing that, for taking it right to the source. They took it right to Congress, instead of like burning people's cars and businesses.
Yeah. I can definitely agree with you there. I feel like, there is like an ethos overlap between liberty and, alternative goth punk culture. Right. So I guess explain how you kind of combine these two ideas, and obviously this is how you present yourself. I do the same thing. So You know, how do these ideas overlap, and why are these good vehicles to, you know, introduce people to liberty?
Well, if anything, Goth is a nonconformist subculture. Any kind of alternative culture is at its basis nonconformist. And there is no ideology that spreads absolute individualism than libertarianism, because it considers that the individual is the true minority, and embraces liberty. And if you're going to be nonconformist, you're going to need liberty. That's what you are striving for, that the liberty to be yourself, to express yourself, to wear what you want. So if anything, libertarianism, alternative culture really do go hand in hand. And as someone, I say goth online, I just kind of, in real life, I just like, I'm alt whatever. uh, but because of that, I'm expressing my own liberty to dress as I want, listen to what I want, have my ideas. Whereas, like, unfortunately, I said, like, the left has kind of hijacked the image because they think it's cool. But at its true basis, ideology or ideologically, um, it's the most libertarian thing, or to have that sort of ideal of liberty mixed with alt culture, to be able to really embrace that the individual is the minority.
Would
Like,
you
the
say,
true
like,
minority is the individual.
would you say that music played a role in your political awakening too, or did that happen completely, you know, separately?
Um, I would say it kind of not quite came together. Now, I will say that there are some bands and such that I do like that are a bit political, but for the most part, most goth music is not really political. You do have, bands like the duo Ice Peak. Ice Peak, they're that Russian duo. They're actually blacklisted in Russia because they're very outspoken against the government, and they actually write anti-government songs. So as far as that goes, they're considered witch house. Witch house is kind of like an offshoot of like goth industrial in a way. And when it comes to things like that, I found that after a while, it wasn't like what kind of brought me into it. Because, like I said, most goth music is not really, political. Because goth is not political. It's just yes, it did come from like the post-punk era, but it was made to drift away from that, to appreciate more of the dark and the beauty of darkness, like the morbid and sorrow, death, and old gothic, like architecture, Victorian sort of romance with the darkness of the Victorian era. So as far as political with, like, goth music, goth aesthetic, it's just not. And that's why I just find it so funny when people try to say you're not goth because you're not left.
Well, okay, that brings up a good point. So, you know, I completely agree with you. I feel like punk culture, goth culture, they all swing super left, despite, having kind of anti-authority roots in their structure, trying to be alternative and breaking away from a system, which you'd think would point people more in the direction of freedom at the most absolute level, but they end up going the polar opposite direction. And this could be, just because of the left is better at selling these ideas than the right is. It's possible. I don't actually believe the Overton window is a real thing. I think that these ideas are always out there, and the window is always just a window. It doesn't change. It just swings, the pendulum just swings back and forth, and it just, but why do you think that goth and punk culture tends to swing left, even though we all hate the government so much?
I think that the left still held on with its claws because, as I stated, back whenever you and I were younger and coming up, the left was actually anti-war. They actually were anti-establishment, but the left has gone so far left that it is completely authoritarian now. However, those same alternative cultures that had those roots of, being more about anti-war and anti-establishment, they just never changed their party. But they changed the politics as it went left. But the entire community just kept the title of, being leftist, Democrat. And like you said, they're very good at selling it. They're absolutely better at selling it, and holding up all of these people as activists, because they all want to be activists. I remember I wanted to be an activist too whenever I was in college. But then, you go into the real world and it's different. And a lot of kids, they still hold on to alternative culture before they go into the real world, and they still just kind of hold on to it anyway. And, they get shaped, and, it's just that,
Well, I mean, a
it's
lot
like
of
that
these
political
ideas,
side.
a lot of these ideas, they come, I feel like a lot of these are, stem from, the public education system, obviously being further
Oh
and
yeah.
further ingrained into socialism and communism and all these crazy woke left ideas, right? And it's actually really strange because, like, I don't think, when I went through school forever ago, it feels like now, but I'm looking at generations that are the next generation that's now graduating and moving forward and going into the real world, and they're terrible. Like, they're so much worse. I don't know what could have happened over the last 15 years or so that I've been out of high school, or even, even worse, like elementary school, that these kids are being indoctrinated. But, like, when I was growing up, there was not like any of this, cancel culture. Well, I mean, it existed, but like the canceling people for free speech thing, I think free speech was more respected in general. And you tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at, like some of the bands and artists that I listen to today, and especially during COVID, they're more afraid to speak out politically, just because, you have, like, COVID was the best example that I can give, I guess, right now, just because you have like people like Pete Parada, who was in The Offspring, one of the original members, was in The Offspring for over 20 years, had vaccine injuries and allergies and couldn't take it. So he didn't take it. And then they kicked him out of the band after 20 years. Right. So, and then,
It's messed up.
tons of other, significantly, important punk bands that I've listened to that, they pretty much just had to keep moving forward and just keep playing music because their livelihood depended on their music, and they have families, they have kids or whatever. But they can't say what they want, even though I know these people. Like, I know them personally. I played Warped Tour in, 2015, and, a lot of these people became some of my friends. And it's just so wild that music used to be, I hate saying this with the word safe space, but music was the safe space to say whatever the hell you want. And, I feel like artists have definitely become more afraid to speak out politically. Why do you think that is?
I don't think that necessarily afraid to speak up politically, only if they're not left. If they're on the left, they're very outspoken. There's a lot of very outspoken leftist musicians. However, anybody that strays from anything that does not fit the mainstream opinion, yeah, they're like in the closet completely. I'm not going to completely out him, but the former rhythm guitarist for Orgy, who is now the lead singer for Julian Kay, he actually leans right. And, it's not like he discusses politics. And I'm sure the reason he doesn't talk about politics or discuss politics is because he does lean right. And the only reason I found out that he does lean right is because, I did some digging. But if he were to talk about, politics at all, he would be canceled, I'm sure. He would be, called like a bigot and a racist and all the other buzzwords, just like how, they try to call Phil Labonte, but he, he deflects it so well. He's
right,
a master.
He does great with that, yeah.
And he's a real badass. Yeah. So he knows how to ride with it. However, I do think there is starting to be a pendulum swing. that it is starting to swing back. You have people like Ronnie Radke. Now, he's not necessarily political, but he's very much against that mainstream
Yeah,
opinion,
very
and
against
he's
cancel
very
culture.
outspoken about that.
They've tried to cancel him
Hmm.
for freaking everything.
I
I've
know, and
played
he just
close
gets
with
bigger.
Ronnie. He's a very interesting fellow. He's a very actually nice guy to meet him in real life. But you know, they've tried to cancel him for literally everything. But I kind of see your point, and there are like some other artists too, like Tom McDonald or whatever, where they'll like put out a bunch of like super, you know, right leaning conservative music.
Hmm.
My problem is that I wish that these people would just keep just being normal musicians. I don't want politics to completely ingrain them and like it seems like once they go into that road, all of their music starts being about the same things.
Yeah.
Like Tom McDonald is a very good example. I love Tom McDonald's music, but like I think he's written the same song 30 times. Do you know what I'm saying? People might
Yeah.
hate me saying
There's
that.
so there's only so much you can say, you
Right.
know, for it to be the same thing, unless you're actually going to, keep it up with the news, but then it's going to get outdated. So, like,
Well,
like for example, Incubus's Megalomaniac, that can stand the test of time because it's less specific.
yeah. So do you okay, so this is a interesting little like we kind of like brushed on it at the very beginning that you're a fake emo, right? You get called a fake goth all the time, right?
Oh yeah,
But
I
what's
got
your take
call it
on
fake off today, actually.
what's your take on gatekeeping subcultures?
Gatekeeping nonconformist subcultures is the most asinine thing one can do, and it's because here's how it is. If you're going to gatekeep a nonconformist subculture, you are basically telling them that they have to check boxes and conform to what the ideal is to make you goth or punk or emo. But it's a nonconformist subculture. It
Yeah,
just
right.
absolutely cancels it out. So to try to gatekeep that to make check boxes because you don't think a certain way, you don't wear your clothes from a certain place, or you do wear your clothes from a certain place. Like they try to say on TikTok that goths can't wear their clothes from Shein. Like who made the rules? Because I don't wear punk rave all the time, I'm automatically not goth because I ordered a skirt from
I
Shein. Like
remember
that's
like
ridiculous.
yes, totally. One of my favorite bands, like Fugazi. Like if you look some of the videos, those guys playing real like live music, they're wearing like gym shorts and just plain t-shirts. Like who made these rules
Mhm.
for the? You know what I mean? It's gotten a little out of control.
Only posers are the ones that gatekeep, the way I see it, because they're the ones who are trying to fit a certain ideal. And if you're trying to fit in a certain ideal, that's obviously not who you are. You're
Mm.
obviously not being yourself because you're trying to fit a mold. And that's when it becomes performance. That's when it comes, being a poser. And
Right.
I don't like calling people posers, but if you are actively trying to go against your natural like expression,
Mm.
then yes, you are a poser. And if you're gatekeeping to try to get people to fall in line to a certain like ideal, you are a poser because you are gatekeeping, and yeah, that's the worst.
Well, we've also kind of like brushed on the fact that like there's this pendulum swinging back and forth, right? And it keeps going further and further in both directions. But like, what do you think
Mhm.
is more dangerous culturally? Do you think woke liberalism is or post-liberal conservatism? Because they both have their crazy sides, right? So I
Oh
feel like
yeah.
I know your answer, but here you go.
I would say wokeism, not just because I don't necessarily like conservatives and I absolutely hate like leftists and progressives. But the reason that wokeism is so bad is because it is like not cultural Marxism, but it's societal Marxism in the sense where you have the oppressed versus the oppressor, but not necessarily the rich versus the poor. You have it as a racial structure or sexuality structure, gender structure. You have it as like an oppression totem, and that leads to inequality when you try to go for equity, because you can't, just like with DEI, you can't just try to say, I'm going to hire this person because they're like black, despite the fact that the white guy has more qualifications. That's, a lot more dangerous to me, that I think, than conservatism at this point in time, because conservatism has actually somewhat uh, been not really infiltrated by like the liberty movement a little bit, but like the Tea Party movement that kind of raised up within the conservatism kind of brought a little bit of that into it, which I like. Not, it's not fully there unless you're talking about Thomas Massey, but it's just a lot less dangerous for that whole modern conservatism compared to the wokeism.
Totally. And I think it's funny because that the music scene, the subcultures, all of it, these are like really big tents. So people, like I said, they try to gatekeep in these all the time. It just doesn't work. It's not even possible, because you go to a concert, we're all in the same place. When you're there, you pretty much all feel like family too, because you're all there for a common cause, to enjoy the band, and their music means something to you. So, it's like there's a common bond there that really, like, it's a great, breaking of the ice if you're talking about other stuff in the future too. But speaking of big tents, I do think that it's okay to gatekeep some things. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, not talk about it a bunch, but I wanted to get your read on the Libertarian Party right now. And do you think it's like a renaissance, a train wreck, or both?
At this point in time, I think it's a train wreck. I think it's very divided. There's a reason why I have not officially joined the party. And I think this last presidential election really was just like a crash and burn train wreck dumpster fire all in one. It just, so many people left the party in the sense of their vote left the party completely, and really handed it to Trump, like hardcore. So
Yeah.
I know libertarians do like to gatekeep each other about liberty. Like, what's the true libertarianism? Like, it's like there can only be one. There's only one true libertarian, and that's what they always gatekeep. And I understand gatekeeping that in a way. So, like, if somebody tried to come up to me and say, I'm a libertarian, but I don't mind the Fed. The Fed's not a big deal, and I don't care about the NSA because I don't have anything to hide. I'm sorry, bud, you're not a libertarian. Like,
Yeah.
I'll gatekeep that. I'll completely gatekeep that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I think that presidential candidate was downright embarrassing to most people who call themselves libertarian.
We don't get along on Twitter.
Very not. He's not an interesting or accomplished person whatsoever. And if you're running for president, you should have something behind yourself that's actually, that could have been its own joke right there. But so
yeah, we don't get along very well. We've gone back and forth a little bit.
I'm glad. I mean, he hasn't blocked me yet. I've had some really good conversations with him. I really don't think he ever should have even put his name in. And the fact that he ended up winning at the convention was a whole nother story. But, I'm really trying really hard to get the Libertarian Party off my podcast for good and not talk about the Libertarian Party too much. But I had to get your read there. But I am curious, what do you think that libertarians are getting wrong when we're out talking to normal people? And I'm not talking about capital L libertarians. I'm talking about like lowercase L, Ron Paul libertarians. What are we getting wrong when we're trying to appeal to normal people?
I really feel like we are not taking a realistic approach when trying to introduce our ideas and ideology to people, in the sense where if you go to a person who they're not completely politically certain, you say we're going to end the Federal Reserve and we're going to end income tax. Some of those things, yeah, that sound great. But whenever you start talking about getting to the real nitty gritty about libertarianism, it's just like, oh, that's a bit extreme. The thing is, I feel like you really need to ease people into it. And that's where I kind of differ. I don't mind a gradual movement towards it, as long as the end result is the ideal. And I feel like to appeal to the politically uncertain, you're going to have to ease people into it. You can't just, take them into like a nosedive straight into the ideology, because some people do feel it's extreme because they haven't really thought about it or realized, we really need to end the Federal Reserve and how big of an impact it has. So, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that we introduce the most extreme takes on stuff to people who are not used to that.
I think so. I was a missionary back in the day, if you didn't know that. I don't know if you're religious at all. Are you religious at all?
No, not really.
So basically where I'm going with this is, Christians have this thing where it's called apologetics. It's how to talk to people. Basically, if you're going to go and try to preach at someone, you learn how to talk to people first. And libertarians aren't good at talking to normal people, but the one thing that I take away from it all the time is that I think everybody just has a different role to play in that. So, Christians will say, like, someone plants a seed, someone else is going to water the seed, and then someone else might see it grow down the road. Whereas libertarians, Ron Paul planted a ton of seeds. He didn't get to water them. Maybe he did get to water some, but there's a role for everybody in that. So some of us are meant to basically be, messengers, right? And to just like get out the good messaging that's appealing to people. Some people want to go from more of that like milk, David Beto kind of libertarian mind, libertarianism 101 stuff, go from the milk of that to going to meat and start eating steak, and they want some better stuff. So we're going to introduce them to Murray Rothbard, and they're going to start reading. Now, a lot of this evolution of, your libertarian ideology happens as an individual independently from anything else. Like, you should never be taking that from another person and just like taking what they believe and making it what you believe. The real like the best part about libertarianism is that we can all read Murray Rothbard. You get the same stuff out of it, but we all take something different out of it. We apply it to our own lives, right? But in order for it to actually work and for you to be an effective libertarian, you have to let it grow and like kind of like do its own thing inside you without having someone else's influence. Because I think that's what sucks, is like that's how you get into echo chambers. You don't have like a lot of libertarians will regurgitate the same stuff on Twitter all the time. There's not a lot of like original ideas, but this is obviously the case with like all politics. People just regurgitate ideas. But I do think that there's so many unique ideas to libertarianism that we just need to kind of do better at maybe understanding we all have a role to play. Now, you have a decent Twitter following, and I think that you have a good opportunity to, plant a bunch of seeds, basically, is kind of where I was going with this. Do you think that Twitter is a good place? I'll give my opinion later, I guess, but to build like a cultural, I don't want to say power, but it is kind of power in swaying politics.
Especially since Elon Musk took over, yes. Because it was a monopoly for the left before he took over. Now, of course, people complain that it's not fully free speech. Whenever it's usually violent speech, he censors, but I digress. With Twitter, you're able to share ideas like automatically. Just, you can type sentence, automatically it's up. The exchanging of ideas is so quick and so instant that I really do feel like, the social commentary going back and forth really can, give way to like planting seeds, like you said. Because like, especially like during like election seasons and, anytime, something like shitty gets passed, you're able to comment it and give your commentary immediately and share your ideas and why it's bad. Like for example, Thomas Massey uses Twitter fairly often, and he's very successful with it, talking about why he's not for the big beautiful bill and why he actually voted for like Biden's budget or something. So I do think Twitter it's great in that sense, to where yes, you can have the social commentary to be able to help people not only maybe change their minds, but to learn something. A lot of people have actually learned more about libertarianism. I'm not saying that I'm the best libertarian, but because I
No,
have that decent following, I have had people who are like, that's kind of a good idea, or like, yeah, that does suck, or maybe we should probably go for that. And it's great for that. It definitely is.
I do like that. You brought up Thomas Massey. I like that we're able to see a politician's thoughts in real time. That is a really great thing,
Mhm.
because that's never really happened in the history of like politics ever. So being able to see what they think in real time is awesome, because then you can also
Mhm.
see how many of them are just completely retarded. Like, you know what I mean? So, we could
Social
cyberbully
media
them.
is wonderful.
Right. But Thomas
Oh yeah.
Massey, obviously, he's man, I feel bad. He broke his hand this last week or something. But he's been so consistently awesome, standing up. Like, it's literally him versus everyone, it seems, all the time. And I don't even know how he puts up with it. Like, I don't know, he's by himself. He's like the lonely
He's
emo.
precious.
Yeah, in a world full of preppy kids. So
But he's still peppy himself, and he's so lighthearted and wholesome.
right.
Like he's a 1 in a million individual, and I think that having him in office is like the best thing ever. And he is just very strong-willed individual for what all the crap he takes on.
Yeah. So what do you think would be one band that influenced you politically, and captures, I guess, your current like libertarian energy? If you, I mean, this might be a hard question, but is there like any band that encapsulate your politics right now?
Maybe Ice Peak is probably the closest, because they have a song called "Terrorist," and one of the lines that she actually sings in English is, "Mama, they say I'm a terrorist, and I didn't do anything, and I did nothing wrong, but I got on a blacklist." And all they did is actually just speak out against the government. So the thing that I really cannot say relate to it, but that I really kind of like about that is because, you had the NSA, you had all the spying on citizens, the 3-letter agencies spying on citizens, even for having these opinions, and how Twitter used to actually cooperate with that crap. It's kind of like, why would they watch you? Do they kind of think you're possibly a terrorist or like a domestic terrorist because you have ideas? Like, they were monitoring parents who were going to like school board meetings, for instance, and they're not doing anything wrong. And that's kind of how the surveillance state has just kind of exploded in our country. And it's something that we still haven't really addressed, even in this administration. And so the fact that Ice Peak really discusses things like that, and they have like a song called "Death No More," just it's talking about like the government versus the people, like saying like, you'll be arrested in the square while I'm in my mansion, like smoking a doob. So I really like Ice Peak for that. They got some real bangers. They have a song that's called like "March." It talks about, well, it kind of like nods a bit to the military industrial complex.
Okay.
And that's another that I just really like for that. So they're probably like the most political band that I listen to that actually does hold a lot more of my beliefs as far as liberty. Now, they probably do lean left, but a lot of their music really can speak out for liberty. And I think it does because they are from Russia,
Mm,
who don't really have like the most freedom of speech, especially to
right.
criticize the government. You get blacklisted and such.
I mean, I think that like the music, like I said, the music I grew up listening to, No Effects, Rage Against the Machine, Anti-Flag, this is music that speaks to people on the right too. The problem is that they don't like back up their words with action anymore. You know what I mean? So like they're not
Mhm.
raging against the machine. They're not really anti-flag. They're just anti that flag, right? And
Mhm.
they're not anti-flag didn't consist of was not a band of anarchists. Like, you know what I mean? Like No Effects. I
Yeah.
think one of their best albums was War on Errorism, which stemmed from Bush and the war on terrorism. And I feel like that whole situation put forth like a wave of incredible music that was just super anti-government, super anti-war.
Mhm.
And then COVID happened. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like every other day I'm seeing like, I see all these like new bands popping up, and I feel like I'm boomer even talking like this right now. All these kids releasing all this shitty music, right? But it's so like it's just bad music. Every
Yeah.
song sounds exactly like it's regurgitated nonsense. There's nothing unique about it. But they like, I don't know, man. Like they really think that they're fighting the same fight that the punks were fighting 20 years ago or 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It is so wild to see them completely wrapped up in the culture that is literally endorsed by the government and touting it as something that is countercultural. It's just so stupid.
Mhm. Yeah, and they try to say they're anti-establishment because Trump's in the White House. But the thing is that who runs academia? Who runs the media? Who runs like even USAID were funding left-leaning projects around the world. Like you can't get more establishment than that. So, anything left-leaning, that's the establishment, regardless if they want to accept it or not. That's the establishment, is the left. It's the hardcore left. They just want to pretend and LARP like they're a bunch of activists and anti-establishment people, but they're really not.
There's a lot of people in the LP that do that too. So we don't get anything
Yeah.
done, man.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, I'll kind of ease out of the politics a little bit and kind of learn more about, like, you started making merch. I think like
Mm.
you started dabbling in it not terribly long ago. Am I wrong? But now you're like selling full blown merch on your website and everything, and you've made some really cool stuff. So I guess tell me how you got started in doing that, and are you putting out some new stuff pretty often? I've seen quite a few new designs popping up every once in a while. So
Yeah. So there was a void and I filled it, is the way I see it, because a lot of the Liberty gear was very military, um, like military influenced. However,
Mm.
you have alt culture people like punks and metalheads and goths who do favor liberty. They do favor that kind of political leaning, but they don't necessarily have any kind of like merch or gear or attire that captures both their aesthetic and their political ideology. So I said, okay, well, there's a void. I'm going to fill it. And I did. And the response was pretty good. So, and I really just genuinely enjoyed playing on my iPad designing stuff. So I started doing it more and more and more. And it took off, especially like these hats. The Make America Goth Again, then I have like metal, punk, and emo. And I made emo, thinking of you and your caucus.
yeah,
So I that was a nod for y'all. So that's kind of where that went. It just kind of grew from there. And then I got onto Fourth Wall from Teespring, because Teespring was terrible. And with Fourth Wall, there was just like so many different kinds of merchandise I was able to do. And it just kind of blew up from there. Like t-shirts, mugs, hats. I even have like leggings, swimsuits,
nice.
sandals. everything. You think of it like I probably have it.
Okay, so I've been saving this a little bit. I think you carry yourself very well, by the way. I think that the world wants to know, like, would you be open to running for office in the future for something, like even like city council, something like that? Because I think that your ideas are powerful. Obviously, Liberty has a lot of powerful ideas, and obviously you've got the platform to kind of help back it up. But I would like to see these voices running for definitely local politics. I don't know. Do you have any political endeavors you'd like to achieve in your lifetime, or?
Not necessarily. I'm happy to take on the political commentator role if the conditions were right, and I feel like, if you want to get something done right, then you got to do it yourself, kind of thing. That may be the only time I would consider any kind of office run. However, I do, I would, I do prefer the political commentator thing, which could also help sway people who are running for office because they kind of want to know what people are saying. And taking on that voice is what I would mostly prefer over trying to actually run and do the thing.
You don't want to like turn your entire town into a Gothic paradise and paint all the buildings black and turn all the red doors black.
How about I just run for the presidency, change the bald eagle to a raven, and paint the White House black, and have our national anthem be something from Sisters of Mercy or something.
Can we collaborate on the whole national anthem thing? Because I feel like if it gets to that point and you're ready to change the national anthem, like I don't like the national anthem. I hate the national anthem, but I think that like there's some songs out there we could find a good one to replace it with for sure.
Yeah.
But
Temple of Love, Sisters of Mercy, great.
Where can people find all your work that you do? Like obviously your Twitter, but also your merch and everything like that.
My merch is libertariangoth.com. So I just kept that just general and sweet, something that was going to be memorable because, yes, it is my handle, but it's also a brand now. It is my brand. And it's also kind of a title for any other, goths that are, liberty-minded. So it encapsulates many different things. So libertariangoth.com is the merch. Then I also have a new music news site that is music news from a liberty perspective. So it's not like Metal Hammer and Rolling Stone to have all of that like left-leaning journalists talk about music. It's, people who are in the liberty movement writing about music, album reviews and such. So that's the alternativesovereign.com.
Awesome.
Now I do also have a stream every Friday night at 10:30 Central Time, PM. That is also called the Alternative Sovereign, which is mostly politically based, current news. But I just kept the name for the news site and the stream to kind of, because it's all kind of one monster anyway. It's all me. It's all my whole thing, with libertariangoth.com as well. But the news site, I do have an amazing team of writers, a couple of writers, still looking for writers. If anybody, wants to get involved. Yep. Yeah, it's actually Impure Hunter is the editor of the alternativesovereign.com.
Nice.
So yeah, he's great. And Spanish Jesus is one of the writers as well. So those are basically where a lot of my projects can be found. I do have YouTube, where my stream is done. It's streamed on YouTube, Rumble, and X under Libertarian Goth. So the Alternative Sovereign stream is under Libertarian Goth. But the alternativesovereign.com is the music news site.
That's awesome. So I guess final thoughts from you. I don't want to keep you too long. Do you have just any message that you want libertarian goths out there to hear right now? What would that be?
I would say, if you're not afraid to be yourself already, as an alternative culture person, goth, punk, whatever you whatever subculture you know, subscribe to, if you're not afraid of that, don't be afraid to share your ideas. Don't be afraid to actually express that real individualism that you display with your, you know, aesthetic or with your lifestyle, because, you know, you're going to find that there actually are a lot more like-minded people out there than you know. There is one YouTuber that talks against leftism, and he is a goth. Jake Monroe, for example, he has openly discussed how, you know, he wants freedom of expression within the goth community, and I think that's wonderful. And I really, I co-sign that completely. So if you are going to be the individual you are, don't be scared to have those feelings and opinions, even if they differ from others, because conformity is not always conformity of dress and music, like style. Conformity of thought is the most damning conformity that there is, because your mind is what makes you you. And so if you want to really be that real individual you are, speak up.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Twitter's a really easy place to get caught up in echo chambers. So try to not fall into that. Create some original opinions out there. Yeah, read some more Murray Rothbard, right? Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Everyone should definitely check out the podcast. And obviously, I didn't even know about the music review thing. That is awesome, too. And check out her merch site, libertariangoth.com. So people can follow you at libertariang0, correct? TH.
Yep.
She tried to be all cool and replace the O with a 0.
No, it was already taken. It was already taken.
Well,
yeah, so I had to put a 0.
You should trademark it because it's now yours. So appreciate you so much.
When it comes to merchandise, it is trademark.
I'll drop you backstage real quick and catch up with you in a moment. Wrap up the show here. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching tonight. I really appreciate it. So next Saturday, I'm going to be at Midwest Peace and Liberty Festival. I am going as one of their keynote speakers, and it's going to be awesome doing some talk on punk rock libertarianism, agorism, how to, let your art influence the culture. And I'm also going to be DJing a little emo night, which is going to be a good time as well. So I'm going to be doing a live podcast at some point during that time, either Friday or Saturday. And then the next week, I'm coming back with another show from right here in my new place. So thank you guys again for watching. Hope you guys have an awesome night. And please like and subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. Could use some more subscribers. Thanks. Bye.
Coming for the throat! Demons make my knuckles fucking